We have JB in Colorado, who's got a question, a theist who's got a question about epistemology. So welcome, JB. How are you?
Good. How are you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Yes. Okay, great. Yeah, I wanted to ask about naturalism. If naturalism is true, it seems like the consequences would be that all of our known reality is just a mechanism or a machine, however you'd like to frame it, and wondering how a mechanism could produce epistemology, not any theory of knowledge.
So I'm wondering if we're, I would genuinely like to answer your question, but I'm wondering if we're not getting reductive here, because my point is that epistemology is something that we have discovered. It's just ways of evaluating information so that we are most likely correct.
Right. Yeah, I could take that approach.
But I'm still talking.
Okay, sorry.
But you're asking how naturalism could produce that. Have either Jim or myself said that we are philosophical naturalists? Now, Jim might have, I don't know. But
yeah, this would be just general. I wouldn't pin it on you guys. Just in general,
so why don't you call someone who's advocating for philosophical naturalism? I'm not. I advocate for methodological naturalism.
Yeah, I would say it would still apply to that. That you would still have a problem when you say we.
What is the problem?
Knowledge.
No. What I'm saying is that we take in information and we reach conclusions. Are we in agreement that that's what happens?
No, that would. If you're strictly a mechanism, is there any mind appraising any of the information or data? If it's just a mechanistic response, then it's a predetermined
no, that's an assertion that you cannot and have not demonstrated. The fact that there is a mechanism doesn't mean that mechanism is not evaluating information. I got a computer on my desk, which is entirely a mechanism, and it evaluates information and puts out results based on the heuristics that we programmed it with.
That required a mind.
I have a mind. Is your real question? How could a mind arise in a purely mechanical naturalistic universe? Is that your real question?
Actually, close. I guess it would be, what is a mind in a purely naturalistic reality?
My mind is what my brain does.
So your mind is not identical to the brain. A mind is.
Why is it that when I give you an answer, JD?
Stop crying. I'm clarifying.
Did you just say stop crying?
No, he said he's clarifying.
Okay. I'm asking you a question, JD. Why is it that when I give you an answer, you have to try to frame it in a different way? I just said my mind is what my brain does.
So a mind is an action.
No.
You just said it does. Doing is action.
Yeah, but okay. A mind is an emergent property of my brain. That doesn't make it an action. It makes it an emergent collection of actions.
Okay, a mind is an emergent property of the brain. Does that mean a mind is physical, distinct from the brain, or
the mind doesn't exist? The mind is not it exists only as an abstract, as an emergent property of the brain. That's what my view of it is right now, and I have zero expertise here, by the way, and it's not relevant to anything. The burden of proof is on the people who are. So we know there's a natural world. We know that.
Right.
We don't know if there's anything beyond the natural world, and it is incumbent on those who are asserting that there is a natural world to prove that. I'm not saying there isn't a supernatural world. I'm saying nobody's demonstrated that there is.
Okay, so you're not like a strict physicalist that there's only physical.
Here we go again, JB. No, you're asking because you didn't listen. I asked you if I was a philosophical naturalist, and then I told you I wasn't. Did you not hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what the difference? Well, do you know what the difference between a physiological naturalist and a philosophical naturalist is? Do you know what the difference between the two is?
Not at the top of my head, but you could tell me.
Okay. So that's part of the problem there, Matt, is that he doesn't know what you're talking about when you're talking about methodological versus philosophical naturalism. Do you want to explain that one there, Matt? You're probably better at that than I am.
Philosophical naturalism is the philosophical position that the natural world is all that exists. I don't know how anybody could ever demonstrate that. Methodological naturalism is the position that we don't have reason to believe that there's something beyond the natural world yet. So we only get to appeal to the natural as explanations for phenomenon until such time as somebody demonstrates that there's something more than the natural world. Methodological naturalism is about how we come up with proposed explanations for phenomenon. Philosophical naturalism is an assertion about ontology, about what is.
Okay, yeah, that's a good distinction. Wouldn't the latter assume a bunch of things that are not actually physical to then explore the natural world? Any sort of methodology would assume a bunch of things that aren't actually natural or physical?
I don't know what you mean. That any methodology would assume a bunch of things. So the goal of creating any decent methodology is not to violate essentially Occam's razor by proposing too many. Sorry, my brain is failing on the word.
By proposing too many solutions
by
to the
multiplying
problem.
entities unnecessarily.
Yeah.
So
right.
I don't know what it is that you're saying we would have to invent, because at the end of the day, I think that I would hope that you and I and everybody else could agree that we live in a natural world. Whether or not there's a supernatural component is still up for grabs. And yet my brain sits here and thinks and processes, and it can get things correct seemingly, and it can get things incorrect. And we have studied the methods that we use to determine whether or not we're likely to get something correct. This is a link, it's a process of learning how to reason. And so we know that rolling a dice isn't likely to get you to the correct answer. The random chance isn't likely to do it. We know that praying for help isn't likely to get you to the truth. And so if we're going to figure out what causes the rain or what causes lightning, well, we could just write it off to the gods, or we could investigate. And then as we get more and more data, it narrows the picture. Each bit of information we get excludes certain other potential explanations. And this is the process. This is why science, which is an attempt to find knowledge, is based on an epistemology that says science doesn't make proclamations about truth. What it does is it creates models that are the best approximations of the single most consistently reliable and accurate models about the universe. But we're not saying X is necessarily true. So all epistemology is, from a naturalistic perspective, is I would like to be more right than wrong. I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. And in this world, until such time as somebody demonstrates that there is or needs to be a supernatural component, all that's required is reasoning. And the fact that we've constructed machines that can do this with certain instructions as well also adds to the demonstration that our minds reason.
Right.
I have a question about something you said. Okay.
No, go ahead and ask your question.
I was going to say to state science is the best route or methodology for X. Would you agree that that statement itself isn't produced in the scientific method itself?
One more time.
Arrived at by the methodology.
No, when we make the claim that science is the best method for getting to the truth, and we define truth as that which conforms to reality, that's because every other method doesn't do it nearly as well, right? It's an exhaustive search of the methods that we know of and as humanity has tried. So if you have another path to truth that is better, we're more than happy to hear it, but it's got to produce better results than the scientific method does.
Right. I would say that the statement, scientific method is the best method for, apprehending truth. The statement itself isn't actually produced by the scientific method. And so it would basically point to that there are certain kinds of truths, and not all truths are pursued the same way. I think you guys would generally agree with that.
No, because truth is that which conforms to reality. That's what you're trying to figure out when you're doing your search for truth, is trying to figure out what reality actually is. And so there aren't many ways a reality works, right, that we have discovered so far. This is one of the reasons why, while I'm a methodological naturalist, everything we've seen so far of the supernatural, every supernatural claim we've seen made so far has yielded to a natural result. The best stillman that I can give you for a supernatural phenomenon is near-death experiences, and that's about it. It's the only thing I can give you.
I have a question, JB, because I heard something. It seemed like you were suggesting that, like, the mechanisms that we talk about, like, can't come from science because it can't come from science. Like, where does it start? And I fully acknowledge, as I have many times when talking about epistemology, that at the foundation of anything, whether it's a moral system or an epistemological system, are some assumptions, some things that you take axiomatically that you can't demonstrate. And that's true no matter what your epistemology is. And so, for example, my epistemology is predicated on the notion that you and I live in the same universe, that while I can't disprove hard solipsism, that we don't and shouldn't waste any time on hard solipsism, and that the intersection of what you believe and I believe, for independent confirmation. Yes, if I have a second person confirm my results, I still am getting all that information through my senses, which are potentially unreliable. But the assumption is that my senses are generally reliable and testably reliable as a source of information about the world that we share. And so those axioms are going to be at the foundation of, I would say, almost any epistemology, including ones that, allow appeals to the supernatural. Does that, I hope that addresses the thing that you were trying to get to.
No, that definitely, that makes sense. Actually, it points out that what I was trying to say is kind of that your rejection of solipsism is you arrive at that through a different form or methodology of truth, maybe coherency, and you could reject it justifiably, but you didn't use the scientific method to reject solipsism. You rejected it on another basis. And so
I didn't hear Matt actually reject hard solipsism.
Sorry.
Well, no, it's fine. It's fine. I do reject hard solipsism, and I do it as a presupposition and as a pragmatic thing. This has to be the case. I don't know any, because otherwise you're just stuck. If you don't begin with something that says, I must, as a baseline, accept that there is some reality I'm interacting with, and that I have some reasonable expectation that the information I get about reality is real, you can't even begin. And so those sorts of pragmatic kind of presuppositions are there, and that's always been the case. My epistemology, if it were to have a name, I've said before, is probably foundherentism, which is a merging of foundationalism and coherentism that was put together by Susan Haack, who's a brilliant philosopher. And I did a quick, on my personal channel, I did a quick kind of epistemology 101, or actually it was foundherentism 101, that went through my admittedly limited understanding of Dr. Haack's work. She would be a much better person to talk about. I would love to do an interview with her on epistemology. But outside of that, you make those assumptions and then you go. And the nice thing about, I don't use the scientific method isn't what I would consider an epistemology necessarily. It's kind of like applied epistemology
somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're starting somewhere before science. You can do science.
I apologize, JB.
Information.
I apologize, JB, but I've got
question.
Oh, all right. I'll let you get one more question, then I have to move on.
Okay. Thank you. Do you think information is physical?
No, well, no. Normally when someone says information, to me, that's an abstract.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know that applies for every scenario that, like, we can communicate information. You could write it down. And so now there's a physical word written on a physical page, but the information does not exist in that word. The information, because it could just be scribbles. The information exists because you and I, hopefully, share a common set of scribbles. And so it's a way to convey the information but it isn't the information itself, in my view. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with that. And because I was wondering if you thought that shared thing, the information is not identical to the medium, but the shared concept, like you and I could actually probably even do Morse code if we understood the medium and get the same concept
Yes.
delivered. If you thought that was from your assessment of the brain and the mind, if you thought that was just an overlap of like physicality, like brain states or however.
Yes.
Like what would that be?
I don't. Yes, I'm positive. I'm not trying to rush you. It's just that I get what you're saying.
That's okay.
I think that everything is brain states. I think that memories are brain states, feelings are brain states, and therefore every discrete air quotes piece of information that air quotes resides in our brain. Everything about our language muddies the waters here, but I think they are all brain states that we are accessing. I don't see any reason to think there's anything beyond that. I don't see any reason to think there's a ghost in the machine, because we know from neuroscience that virtually every aspect of our identity, our preferences, our memories, our likes, our thoughts, our reasoning, all of those things are alterable through mere physical damage to the brain. And in some cases, chemical alterations of the brain, which chemical is still physical. And so what space left is there for anything else? If I can take a board to the head, not to beat up on a previous caller, and go from being an atheist to a theist or vice versa, is that my soul no longer being able to communicate through my brain and steer the ship? And if so, if you can't tell the difference between a person that's being steered by a soul or a person that's being steered by a brain that has had the soul essentially blocked off from it, if you can't tell the difference between the two of those, then there isn't a difference that you can cite. But now I'm off.
Yeah.
I'm off on a soul thing that I don't have time to go.
Yeah.
That's okay. I think I understand your position.
Cool. Thanks so
And
much, JB.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Got to run. I appreciate the call, but call back another time.